All, Dr. Larry Cromwell here from Idaho. I'm with my friend Gary Larrabee in his home in Spokane, Washington. Gary's trying to teach me how to use YouTube as a resource or an information delivery tool. I've had several requests over the last half a dozen years or so, I suppose, of asking me to kind of write down or synthesize some of the conversations that I've had with people so that they could refer back to it from time to time. I've tried several times to form a web page using web page for dummies, and I guess I'm beyond dummy because I've just really struggled with trying to get a web page up. But that's my winter goal this winter, is to achieve that. And today's YouTube video is kind of a first test run, experimenting, and a learning tool for me on how to operate the YouTube functions. And I thought I would outline 6, 7, 8 part diagram of kind of what we envision to come. First off, we'll probably do some sort of an introductory video that will give a little background and history of my life with natural medicine. And it'll give you a foundation to have some basis of understanding from whence I come, my mental thinking and my sharing. My general approach to sharing alternative medicine is I don't preach. I don't try to sell. I just simply try to share the information as it has been given to me over the years through my education, observation, and experiences. I kind of try to share and then let you make up your own mind. I specifically try not to give advice. I specifically try just to give you the benefit of my input and let you make up your own mind. So this won't be a medical YouTube site. This will just be an informational and educational website and YouTube site. The second area after introduction and background is I thought I'd share with you a little bit what I think my passion is now for the rest of my life's chapters for this earthly walk, and that has to do with feeding nutritionally dense products to deserving, undernourished, and children particularly, but people of all ages and cultures that are unable to provide basic sustenance of food and water for themselves. There are a lot of children feeding programs out there, and they're just tremendous. We have observed that a lot of those programs are based upon budget, understandably so, no criticism intended. One of the major churches, for instance, and please forgive me, my dyslexia might take over here, I might have the numbers backwards, but one of the major Christian churches of the world has an approximate budget, if I remember correctly, of 1.2 or 1.4 billion dollars to feed people around the world, and they feed the reciprocal of that number that I get mixed up, approximately 1.2 million meals a day. That budget amortizes out, if my memory serves me correctly, at about 22 cents a meal, and it's comprised of beans and rice. Beans and rice, as most of you probably know, is one of the major staples of the world, and in combination it provides all of the amino acids, where beans alone or rice alone only provide part of the amino acids, but together they provide the full spectrum. And of course there's carbohydrates for energy in beans and rice. Not a lot of essential fatty acids, but it's sustenance, and it's a good starter. I, through a third party, had communication with this particular church group about improving the nutrient density of their feeding program, and they were very, very receptive and in fact interested in that. The difficulty came down to costs. If we add nutrient density, which I already have the formulation completed in my mind and on my computer, if we add nutrient density, it raises the cost, and their total budget figure doesn't change. They're fixed on what they're able to spend. And if we were to raise the nutrient density or the quality of the meals being served, it would eliminate a couple 100,000 people being fed every day. And so Their conclusion, understandably so, was that they'd rather fill a stomach with something and not leave a couple of 100,000 people go hungry, as opposed to filling the stomach with nutrient-dense nutrition. So later on in this video and in the videos to come, I'll share with you some of those budgetary and problematic issues that we'll need to overcome. Well, and let's do that. Let's wait. I'll expound on that just a little bit more in a minute. So my passion is feeding the third world countries, and I call that kind of area Nutramana. I call that product line Nutramana, and it'll come in several different form factors. I call them a steak, a shake, a cake, and a hydrate. The obstacles again are price point, and the other major problem to overcome with this particular group of recipients is the majority of them don't have a good GI tract health. The environment in the gut is just deplorable, and sometimes you can feed people like that the best nutrition, and they don't uptake it. They ingest it, they don't digest it. And you know, that's also kind of a dilemma for us Americans who are overfed and undernourished with some of the palate pleasures that we have in this country. We don't have the best healthy gut, and so therefore we don't uptake the nutrition that we ingest. And the majority of us probably don't eat the best diet to start with to have that nutrient density in our meal sources, but to compound that, we don't have the capacity to process what we do have. Kind of the third area of interest to some of you that have expressed questions. You may, and some of you may be saying, well, this is kind of interesting about feeding the world children, and you know, there's one child every 6 seconds dies in the world. The one child every 6 seconds dies. The majority of those are from food or nutrient deprivation or starvation. Not all. 1 in 6 every 6 seconds is starvation related, but the majority are. And you may say, well, that's interesting, and that's kind of a good cause, and yeah, I might be interested in seeing if I can't do some hands-on. We aren't particularly looking for money for this. We think we have a foundation, 3 or 4 foundations that are going to fund it. We just need hands-on support from time to time. But you may say that's good, but how really does that affect me today in my everyday life? And so to answer that, we're going to have a series of YouTube videos that are basically domestic application of this nutrient-dense product line. And those areas are can be broken down into demographic groups as well. The first and foremost that comes to my mind is the school lunch, breakfast, and lunch programs. Interestingly, there are a couple of case studies that you can Google and look up. One is a county in San Diego, a school district in San Diego County, California. Another one was in New York City some years ago, and the third one's in Washington, D.C. And there was always a problem, and of course a problem creates the need for a solution and becomes a call to action in a lot of cases. And those particular cases, they totally revamped the school lunch program to make it healthier, more nutrient dense food. They eliminated the soda pops and the candy bars and the whole coin-out machines, and the results were absolutely linear. I mean, directly linear. And I would encourage anybody that has any interest in that type of a performance out of children or grandchildren or students to research. Google it. Don't take my word for it. Get on and read the report documentation. The particular school in New York, if I recall correctly, went from the bottom in the SAT test to almost the top in a 3-year period. The school in San Diego had similar results. They ended up having the highest placement, graduate student placement into colleges. Not only were their academic scores increased and their SAT and other measurements of educational values tests at the top of the list, but so were their other sports performances. Not just football and basketball, which were included in it, but things like golf and tennis and skiing and the cheerleading drill team and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They all excelled in the upper echelons of all the various and sundry competitions. So there's quite an application there. It's a very eye-opening, interesting approach that, from a macroeconomic health media overview, the difference that it can make. The one side note that I would give you here as well is that the school lunch program budget did not increase significantly, and the school disciplinary problems with the children declined significantly. The children were more at ease, they were more relaxed, there was less Ritalin required, as I recall in one of the reports. There was less student-teacher confrontation, there was less student-student confrontation, there were happier parents, there was less parent-principal confrontation, and so the ripple effect was just incredible. So if that's an area that's going to interest you, we'll have quite a ongoing session on that, and again, you can research it online. It's New York, San Diego, and Washington, D.C. school districts. Another area for the domestic application is assisted living, convalescing hospitals for recuperative trauma, rehabilitation. The majority of substance abusers are very deplete in some of just the basic foundational nutritional values needed for common everyday functional physiology. And the Nutrimana is, that I discussed earlier, the foundation formula for the Nutrimana that I referenced earlier, has a full spectrum balanced combination, and I'll get into that a little bit more here in a minute, but there'll be a full series again on that as well. This just dumbfounds me. The welfare nutrition food stamps. People can buy junk food all day long. They can't buy vitamins. At least not in the 2 states that I've talked to recipients in. They cannot buy basic vitamins, which are some of the basic ingredients for food ingestion, for nutrition. And yet you can buy Sure drinks on food stamps. And so we would like to develop, just as we are in the Nutrimana for the third world children, we'd like to develop a flavor-packed, multi-flavored product line for nutrient-dense meal enhancement or real meal replacement that could be utilized by the food stamp program. That's going to be interesting to see how much campaign and politicking and marketing or sales pressure that's going to take in order to get that achieved. But the need's absolutely and obviously there. Part of that could be accredited to education or perhaps lack of education on nutritional cooking, but by the same token, when they're denied access to basic vitamins and minerals on a food stamp program, somehow I can't connect those dots for reasonable thinking. Everyday foundation and function just for people like you and I who just kind of need to take care of ourselves and want to take care of ourselves, and we go out and we struggle at whichever grocery store or drugstore or supplement supplier that we go to. We have to sort through a tremendous array of supplements and vitamins and minerals to try to figure out, well, which one's the best, which one's right, which one should I take, should I have iron, should I have or not have iron, is it going to contradict my prescription modalities and protocols that my MD has graciously shared and got me on. So there's an interesting whole line of conversations that we can have in that. And this comment right now, I'll admit to you, is almost a teaser, because part of where we're going to head in this conversation and in our future endeavors is a pre-screening, pre-qualified, best-of-class product line, and at wholesale prices. That's, I personally like to take supplements, and I personally am frustrated by the cost when I can buy them for 50% off or a third off, and the poor average American has to pay full bore retail. So we're going to try to develop a program that eliminates as many of the middlemen as possible, to where we can get the product line down at a more favorable price point. And I'll share more on that in just a minute. So the everyday foundation and functional applications of a nutrient-dense supplement, meal replacement, meal enhancement, is not only for prevention, but it's maintenance and repletion. And some of you may know the word repletion, and some of you may not. But basically, in this wonderful country of ours, we're all deplete or imbalanced in one or more, and preferably, not preferably, but probably more of the vitamin and mineral constituents needed for optimum health. And so we've tried to assess these things on a national scale. The average American is deplete in vitamin D. The average American is deplete in iodine. The average American is deplete in zinc, from what I read. They are amazing statistics. And so we kind of try to assess all of those that we can find through our research data points, and we've tried to develop a balanced, nutrient-dense supplement that will fulfill that without overgoing in the density balance. Sometimes too much is just as bad as too little. So it's been an interesting mental gymnastic, but we can share those formulas and those leverage points with you more as we go through this series. Sports and performance. Some of us go to the gym, and some of us like to lift weights, and some of us like to jog or run or compete in competitive events, and we'd like to be at our optimum peak performance. And some of us, my golly, just like to be able to go out and split firewood all day and not have to take 3 naps during the intermission of getting that daily work done. So that's performance to some of us as well. And then we have the mental acuity performance. We live on coffee, we live on soda pop and caffeine, and a lot of us in our daily grind in our rush world, and by having some brain food, if you will, please, we can kind of help along the lines of mental nourishment, mind, mental, memory, cognitive, recollection, processing. Those are things that are all, well, when we're young, do we not take them for granted? And then as we get older and we start stumbling and fumbling a little bit here and there, we begin to recognize that, I used to be able to do that math in my head. Now they came out with these calculators, and gosh, I can't hardly do 12 by 12 without having to stop to think about it. So the mental capacities are an interesting nutritional field, and we'll spend quite a bit of time on that, and Alzheimer's and dementia and just recall, recollection. Area 4, I've already kind of started to touch on a little bit. I have spent, gosh, I hate to admit how many years, 40 years maybe, kind of reviewing, looking at, reading articles, researching different products and product manufacturers, plural, to try to determine why one product that's called vitamin D3 or CoQ10 or aloe vera might be better than another product that has the exact same name on the label. I'm not a biochemist, and this has been an intriguing and interesting and challenging adventure for this individual. But we have come a long ways, and we have met and resourced with some minds that I think are beyond description in some of these each and respective areas. I'm going to come back a little bit in a minute and touch on, I'll just pick on aloe vera as an example in a moment, but we've tried Basically, we tried to identify the best of class, not only in a product, but in a processor of a particular product, to sort it out from those that maybe have a less quality product from a resource point of view, from where it's grown or harvested or cultivated, and then also the processing facility. Many of them overseas now are compliant with the majority of the American and international standards and practices acts and codes. But you know, they need to be audited, just like our American labs need to be audited. And so we've kind of tried to do our best so far, and will continue to pursue researching and reviewing. We call that R&R in each one of those areas. And we would, if we stumble at trying to find the best of class in so many of these areas, golly, how is it the average American could even begin to attempt to determine what the best of class is? So we're kind of trying to develop a standard and a rule, a measurement rule that will be explainable in everyday language, that you can rely on with some credibility and confidence in the integrity and competence. And we're basically trying to develop the equivalent of a best housekeeping seal of approval, and we call it the best of class in best of class research and review. Area 5 is so you got this product for feeding world kids, starving undernourished world kids, and now you've got a product that you can perhaps expand and grow into school lunch programs, assisted living, welfare, nutrition, everyday foundation for people like you and I to buy the product off of a shelf somewhere or off of a web page online. Amazon, maybe we'll get Amazon to see if they want to help market the product. Sports performance and mental performance. So you've gone through and you've picked out the best of class in these areas. Now, how affordable are they? Yeah, I'm into, you might say, yes, I too am interested in better health and nutritional support, but good golly, every time I go to the store, it's $100, $200, $300, and it just discourages me from continuing on with that. Well, we have developed, and it's in fact already in place, called a private membership association, PMA, if you will, and it is specifically designed to be a dispensary commissary. It's almost a step or two beyond a co-op style neighborhood store where you become a member and share in the savings. It might interest you to just, if you're into some mental trivia, it might interest you to Google or get your old-fashioned dictionary and look up the word dispensary and look up the word commissary. We have done a lot of work over the last 20 years in kind of trying to find some of these resources and outsources and best sources. And I'd like to pick on aloe vera. I mentioned that earlier a moment ago. We found a grower with domestic offices here in the United States that went to somewhat pristine, pardon me please, pristine island in the East Pacific, Asian waters, tropical, warm area, and they have acres and acres or hectares of aloe vera grown organically and biodynamically is the word I would choose to use. They specialize in aloe vera. They grow it right there. They do not just cut off the leaf and throw the whole thing in the hopper. They take the added effort and fillet each leaf and take the best part out of the fillet and use that in the ingredient. They do their own processing in-house. Excuse me, please. And have extremely high quality standards in their lab, and can ship direct then to people like myself and to you. This is not only a best of class qualifier, but this also achieves our goal of eliminating as many freight forwarders and brokers and agents and marketing people as possible. We've cut out as many of the middlemen as we possibly can, and no discredit to them for the good job they do in the normal line of distribution. But in our commissary and dispensary, we need to be as direct, resource direct as possible. The day probably will come when we will own our own labs for quality control, but not just for quality control, but also for economies of scale. So anyway, we've picked on this poor aloe vera supplier here today, and we're able to be as direct to the Lord's earth as possible, which is the source of growing all of these major supplement ingredients in one form, fashion, or another that are natural. And while I'm on that topic for just a moment, please, we have already developed a full spectrum whole food vitamin. Should be bottled, well, this month. This is November, so it should be bottled later this month. We've also developed a plant-based mineral as opposed to a earth-based mineral like cobalt and some of the heavier atomic scale minerals. We have developed a plant-based mineral vitamin supplement. Both of those are synergistic. You actually need to take both of them in order to get the optimum performance out of each. And those will be out. And the plant-based mineral, we have a one-stop shop. We found a wonderful man out of Utah, wonderful gentleman out of Utah, Texas, Oklahoma, that has been able to assist us in those formulations and resources. But again, that takes us back to this dispensary concept of being able to provide for all of us the best of class at the most reasonable price. Now, we set up the PMA, and I applied 3 different times with the IRS in trying to get the right EIN number of a nonprofit. I just admit to you, I finally gave up. And so as far as the IRS is concerned, the PMA at this point in time is registered as a for-profit entity. I believe it's 1040 or 1041. I don't recall that we're supposed to file for that. But we will continue to operate it on a nonprofit basis and trying to keep the margins down. And should there be any money left over at the end of the year, we'll do whatever we have to do to satisfy Uncle Sam. But in theory, we will either give some kind of a credit or incentive or bonus back to the members that are buying product through it, or we will take that money and put it into the put it into the Nutrimana project to feed the kids that don't have the ability to feed themselves, economic ability to feed themselves. One of the next areas is that all my life I have thought about retiring to a particular lake in Idaho and writing a book, and then it went into a series of books and textbooks for the college level naturopathic and nutritional student. And it's kind of ended up that I've called this the 7C series, and it stands for Cromwell's Collections, Correlations, Considerations, Condensations, like Reader's Digest, Commentaries, Conclusions. And so it's now, with all this fancy electronic database stuff, it won't be in a hard copy form. I probably have 200 feet, without exaggeration, shelf space of textbooks, and I'm going to go through each one of these textbooks again one by one, and I'm going to do a topical, and we might pick high blood pressure, we might pick breast cancer, we might pick hypertension, benign prostate, BHP. Anyway, we'll pick any number of subjects, and then we'll go through each and every one of these books, and we will pull out the case histories, the case studies, the advice, the recommendations, the comments from each one of these books that we're able to identify, and we're going to correlate it and put it all in one one file. So if somebody says to you, my granddad's got Alzheimer's, why, or my dad's got Alzheimer's, or I'm getting Alzheimer's, why, this will be a resource that we can all go to and read the different opinions from different people, and the resources will be identified. They'll be referenced. Golly, over the years, I wish I'd have had that. I know of a young lady right now in Canada that's just going through a real challenge with the disease that's misdiagnosed, misdefined, and mistreated, in this man's humble opinion. And to a hungry researcher like myself, why, that's a point of opportunity to be of service, to be a deacon to this young lady. It just takes hours and hours and hours to dig this type of information out of a file, let alone information that's like heart disease or breast cancer, that's got more articles than you could ever read in a lifetime. And so there's going to be some extreme research tools in this, and then there's eventually, in my opinion, if we can achieve our goals here, I've got 3 or 4 people in mind that we're going to try to hire to help, to do nothing but sit there and do this kind of mundane work. And so there'll be some everyday information, and there'll be some pretty extreme, far-reaching information out there. So it's going to be a resource database, access to the members. Membership in that PMA is probably going to be $5 or $25 or something. I don't know. Let's touch on another little concept here. 3, in this gentleman's opinion, 3 of the better and in fact best of class whole food based vitamins are only sold through licensed practitioners. They just seem to me, each and every one of them, to be unique in their own foundational areas and of the highest quality and the highest standards, and come from the companies of high integrity. Our best of class vitamin that I mentioned to you earlier will be about the third of the retail cost of the product that comes through this other line of distribution. So if we have a membership fee of $29.95 a month per person per month for membership in the PMA, the best of class PMA, private membership association, they're going to get the equivalent of what these other companies would charge in vitamins and minerals. That is equivalent to about $84 a month. So while I don't knock their product, I think their product is fantastic. I have compassion for the budget of everybody's billfold, and so we've tried to, without cheating anybody, I mean, in the 3 companies, we haven't tried to steal anything from them. We've just gone out and formulated our own product, found our own resource, our own natural whole foods, and we've developed a product line that for $29.95 a month in membership fee, you'll get approximately $84 worth of supplement by the standard that's in the street on the common marketplace. So part of our goal is to help encourage, define, offer, enhance everyday common people's access to natural and, in some cases, biblical health care, tenets, practices, protocols, procedures, and at the same time reduce healthcare costs and increase the functionality. Now, an interesting comment yesterday on the stock market reports. They were interviewing Michael Milken. I hope I'm pronouncing the gentleman's name correctly. He kind of was infamous with a wreck with the junk bond market. Some time gets away from him. Maybe it's 20 years, maybe it's 15 years, but maybe it's 25 at this stage of life. But several years ago, and he had some personal health care, and he got maybe 33 months, I don't recall. He got X amount of vacation in a federally funded hotel, and he spent a lot of time researching his own health issues, and when he came out, he still had some personal wealth, and he spent a lot of this wealth in health care. He made it to me what was the most fascinating comment yesterday. He said, look at the history. 50% of the total economic growth of our economy has in one way, form, or fashion been built out of biomedical research and development. So if we can kind of help in a tiny way of reducing the costs on an everyday application basis for the consumers of America and Europe, and at the same time potentially develop a lab that can achieve economies of scale and continue to do some research in specific areas, it just kind of is a win-win. So for those of you that are interested in the economics of healthcare, we're going to have a mini-series with some interviews with some pretty fascinating people and bring some facts to light in those areas that I never suspected, and I've been around healthcare basically all my adult life. Well, I was trying to keep this to about a half hour. Looks like we've run over about 5 minutes. Like I say, this is our first time of trying to do a YouTube interview, and this is kind of our test run. I hope I've shared with you a pretty good description of the basics as to where we're heading, and I would like to encourage you all to feel free to send in your comments and questions. I don't do medical advice, but I'll be glad to point you to some books and make some references in those applications if you'd care for that approach. And I want to talk about one more thing. AHG, Alternative Health Group. Alternative Health Group is a not-for-profit, I don't want to call it a co-op, it's also a private membership association, a not-for-profit equivalent to a health insurance company that will pay for alternative health care. I don't know what their webpage is, but I'll have it up here shortly. They've asked me to, a lot of these things are free consulting, so when I say I'm on their advisory board, I'm privileged and honored that they would ask, but it's not a for-paid issue. So I mean, I get no skin secondary or primary or secondary reward whether you consider Alternative Health Group or not. But anyway, getting to the point, they're going to offer health insurance for alternative practitioners. So if you have desire to go to a naturopath, a homeopath, a traditional Chinese medicine, a massage therapist, a chiropractor, this insurance company, this private membership association, will pay for that like your regular insurance pays for going to your MD. Like I say, I want to emphasize that it's not for profit. I don't own any of it, and I'm not on salary, and I don't get any kickback of any form, fashion, or another. I have to pay my own $250 a month or whatever the premium is right now on my own. And interestingly enough, it also is an alternative to Obamacare. It appears that it's been approved to be an adjunct and or a replacement for the forced sign-up of Obamacare. I think the jury may still be out a little bit on that, but I do know that there are those that have that strong opinion. So until we get on with our group of series in our 7 or 8 categories, I'd like to wish you all the best and blessings and good health and prosperity.